All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes Live. I'm Sean Redfern, your host. And tonight we're going to be talking about, can those Texas Longhorns avoid a letdown? And can they stampede over those Wyoming Cowboys? Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, you don't like to see ugly people on camera doing podcasts, which is what I'm doing now. If you don't like that, you can check us out at horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com or search Horn Takes Podcast on any place that you like to listen to podcasts. Little recruiting roundup. Pretty big recruiting weekend this weekend for Texas. Got a lot of guys visiting. 2024 class, 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo out of Missouri. He's going to be in the house. And then I think probably the biggest outside of him is the 2025 class, DeCorian Moore, 5-star wide receiver, LSU commit. We talked about it when he committed a week after Colin Simmons committed to Texas. We did a show where we talked about it, and then we posted up on TikTok and said, a commitment a year and a half before you're even going to step foot on campus is not a commitment. DeCorian Moore is going to be in the house Saturday night when Texas takes on Wyoming. I think he wants to go to Texas. I don't even know why he committed to LSU, just to be perfectly honest. Then out of the 2025 class, you got wide receiver Marcus Harris. He's a 4-star out of Mater D, California. 5-star wide receiver Andrew Marsh, 5-star wide receiver Ja'Cory Watson. You're going to hear a lot over the next year or so. Lots of 4 and 5 stars want to come and visit Texas that are wide receivers. 4-star wide receiver Taz Williams. 5-star offensive tackle Michael Fasusi is going to be in the house. Offensive tackle Jonte Newman, not currently rated, but Alabama's after this guy. Georgia's after this guy. Texas is after this guy. He's obviously a good football player. 4-star offensive tackle Devin Harper. 3-star defensive lineman Xavier Okponu. Hope I pronounced that right. 3-star linebacker Anthony Williams. 4-star cornerback Kobe Sellers. Not rated athlete Xavier Scouron out of Texas. Another guy that's got Alabama, Georgia, probably LSU. He will be rated at some point. 4-star wide receiver London Smith from the 2026 class. And then not rated cornerback LeBron Bauer. Same story. Lots of schools already interested in this kid. He's interested in a lot of other schools. These are all guys that will be rated. Big recruiting weekend. And follow that up with a very big win on the road against Alabama in front of probably the most impressive list of visitors you'll ever see the rest of this season. Recruiting looks to be going pretty well right now for the University of Texas and Steve Sarkisian. Week 3, trace other games. These are all SEC games. And folks, I'm not going to sit here and SEC y'all, but I am very excited about being in the SEC just based off of our experience in Tuscaloosa, Alabama over the weekend. It really does just mean more to these folks. That's not a slogan. That's like an absolute truth. It does mean more in the SEC. We experienced it on Saturday. I can't wait to experience more of it. Plus, honestly, just some of these are kind of interesting games. So let's start it off. Number 14, LSU is at Mississippi State. This game kicks at 11 a.m. Central Time on ESPN. LSU's a 9.5-point favorite. I feel like I'm an honorary Mississippi State fan because I spent like 2 nights in Mississippi. And I know that's the most ridiculous thing you've probably ever heard, but I did. I spent 2 nights in Columbus, Mississippi, which is probably 25 minutes outside of Starkville towards the Alabama line. Not far at all. So I feel like I'm kind of like a, honorary Hell State fan now. LSU obviously has kind of had an up and down season so far. They dropped the big one to FSU to start the season. A lot of high hopes for LSU coming into this season. Folks were talking national championship or at least playoffs, definitely SEC championship. But they got busted really hard against Florida State in that week 1 matchup. And then they just absolutely destroy Grambling, which, I mean, is kind of sad. I mean, it's kind of sad, honestly, that LSU is playing Grambling in football. The one thing I don't like about the SEC, for all the talk about how tough the schedule is in the SEC, honestly, you guys play a bunch of pussies, a bunch of cream puffs in the non-conference schedule. And you know what? Texas is going to come in 2024, and they're going to change that because we're going straight to Michigan week 2 to take on what's probably going to be a team that, you know, maybe they don't make the playoff this year, but they're definitely a team that I think is going to compete to make it into the playoff in 2023. And Texas just says, we're going to go right on the road. We're going to take them on, just like we went to Tuscaloosa last week, took on Alabama. Texas is going to come into the SEC, y'all, and try to fix this whole you guys don't play anybody non-conference problem that the SEC has. As far as LSU goes, I don't even know. I mean, I don't know if we know how good or bad they are. I mean, we really don't know how good FSU is. All we know is that FSU and LSU played, and FSU came out on top and looked really dominant in the second half of that game. Mississippi State 2-0 with wins over Southeastern Louisiana. I don't even know that was a school. I don't even know where that school is at. And then you got Arizona, which is a name. It's a Power 5 name, but it's still Arizona. I don't even know how good they are. But they're 2-0. I kind of like the whole, you know what makes me interested about this game, really, is I kind of like the whole, like, let's do this for the Pirate thing. Like I don't even know if that's a story, but it should be. If the Mississippi State fan base isn't trying to figure out a way to, what did he say? Shake the sword, wave the sword, whatever it was that Mike Leach used to say. If they're not saying that stuff, they're wrong. This is like the perfect time to say all that stuff that Mike Leach would say. So I'm interested in this game. I think ultimately LSU is going to be way too much for Mississippi State to keep up with offensively. I mean, I think LSU is going to be better in the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. I think LSU is going to win this game 41-20. That's my prediction, 41-20. And by the way, we're only 2 of 6 on these Trace other games so far this year, so we are doing terrible. Last year, we actually did pretty good. I don't know the percentage. I think we're, probably anywhere between 75 and 80% correct on these last year. We need to get back on track, so we think we're getting back on track this week. LSU is going to win this one 41-20. The next game I'm really interested in, and by the way, these Trace other games are just games I'm interested in outside of the Texas game. There's no real rhyme or reason, and all 3 of these this week just happen to be SEC games. But anyway, number 2, South Carolina at number 1, Georgia. This one kicks at 2:30 p.m. Central Time on CBS. Georgia is a 27.5-point favorite at home. The reason I'm interested in this one is because South Carolina finished the season last year on a real high note. I mean, they did some damage, man. They beat Tennessee. They beat Clemson. Those are some games that I don't think anybody on the South Carolina side thought they really had a chance to win, but they won both those games. And then you look at the other side, Georgia is the two-time defending national champions, and they're struggling, according to some people. I haven't seen Georgia play yet this year, but I have seen some narratives that Georgia is struggling. And I also have heard that the SEC is down. I think another cool storyline in this game is Spencer Rattler. I mean, folks, at one point in his collegiate career, Spencer Rattler was widely considered, not just like some OU homers thought it. Like Spencer Rattler was considered a legit number one draft pick, first round draft pick. And then he ends up transferring because Kalen Williams came in the Red River Shootout in 2021. And let's be honest, folks. Let's talk about this one real quick. I know we're interrupting one of my Trace Other Games talking pieces or segments or whatever, but here's the deal. Caleb Williams in that game against Texas just chunked the ball down the field. Go back and watch that game. It's the most frustrating game of my life simply because Texas absolutely could not win any of these 50-50 balls down the field. I mean, Caleb Williams just ran around and then chunked it as far as he could throw it. And his receivers made plays. I mean, credit him. I ain't even trying to say they got lucky. I'm just trying to say Caleb Williams wasn't necessarily the catalyst for that win in 2021. Now he did get loose. It was hard to bottle him up, and then he made throws down the field and gave his guys a chance. And I think it's fair enough to say that as a quarterback, that's really on a lot of those 50-50 type situations. That's all you really need to do is give your wide receiver a chance, and then it's up to him to go make a play. Well, they made a lot of plays, and it really pissed me off. But I'll digress. Spencer Rattler loses his job to Caleb Williams, decides to transfer. He transfers out to South Carolina. And since he's been at South Carolina, we've seen him have some really, really good games. And then we've seen him have some really, really sort of just, mediocre games, like the 2 games he played against Texas. Spencer Rattler got replaced in both games he played against Texas, both games he started against Texas. So I think the question mark for South Carolina fans is really, which Spencer Rattler do we get? Do we get the really, really good one that like makes plays? Or maybe do we get the one that feels a lot of pressure and sort of melts down on himself? I think if you're Spencer Rattler in this type of game, you shouldn't really care that much. I mean, you're, what do we say, 27.5-point underdog? You don't have a lot to lose. Georgia's trying to reload after losing 10 guys to the NFL draft. That is unbelievable, by the way. 10 guys off of that team got drafted into the NFL. And they're the favorite. They're the favorite to win it all again. I mean, that's a testament to recruiting, right? Like, you looked at Georgia, you look at Alabama the last, 3, 4, 5 years. Both of those schools have dominated recruiting. It's a chance for both of these teams to make a statement. Like, neither one of these teams have done anything at this point in the season. And for Georgia, it's not a huge deal probably if you beat South Carolina. But it's an SEC team. It's like a statement win, right? Like we've been struggling. We haven't been as impressive as everybody thought we should be, and now we took an SEC team and folded them up like a pretzel. That's what Georgia's looking at. For South Carolina, you're looking at, man, we got a chance to go into number 1 Georgia in Athens and put them to bed. That would be huge for the South Carolina program. Folks, I really like South Carolina in this game to cover. But ultimately, I think Georgia is way too much. I think they win this game easily, 45-17. And I hope my math is right on that. I feel like my math is right on that. I feel like 17 plus 27.5 is 44.5. So we're good. We covered. But Georgia wins this game easily. The next game I'm super excited about, honestly, to be like 1,000%. This is like, it's going to be hard not to watch this game while I'm watching the Texas game. Number 11, Tennessee, on the road at Florida in the Swamp. 6 p.m. Central Time kick on ESPN. Tennessee's only a 6-point favorite in this game, which is kind of wild. I don't really understand that line necessarily. I'm not betting that line for those of you at home that may feel like I'm some sort of gambler or something. I'm not. I mean, I am, but I don't win anything. I'm like a push, you know what I'm saying? But I'm ready for this to be a series again. The reason I'm so interested in this game is because I can remember back like in the early 2000s when both of these programs were really good and you weren't sure who was going to win. You look at the last 18 matchups in this series, Florida's won 16 of those. So going back to the year that Texas won the national championship, Florida has won 16 games since then to Tennessee's 2. I think if you're a Florida Gator, you got to be amped about this game because you got an opportunity to go play another big game. Like you already went on the road to Utah, got your dick knocked in the dirt by the Utah Utes, by their backup quarterback. It wasn't pretty. Although, honestly, and we said this after the game, I didn't think Florida was as far away as a lot of people felt like they were after that loss to Utah. But anyway, regardless, it's a chance to strap it up again against strap it on again against a really highly ranked team. This time you get them in the Swamp. I don't know. I've never been to the Swamp, so I don't know how big of a home field advantage the Swamp is. But I mean, it's called the Swamp, so it's got to be pretty good, right? This Tennessee team is certainly not battle-tested in 2023. And this Tennessee team certainly lost a lot of offensive firepower off the team last year. I mean, it's just not – it's not the same bunch offensively that sort of took the college football world by storm last year. This one's a tough one for me because I feel like this is the type of game that Florida might end up winning. They're at home. Everybody's doubting them. The defense is pretty good. You know, if you got a good defense, you can stay in games, keep the score close, and then you just never know what's going to happen, right? So I feel like this might be that type of game, but I think Tennessee's going to get it done for the second year in a row, for the third time in the last 19 matchups. Which, by the way, God almighty, if you're a Tennessee fan and you lose this game to Florida, that would just be rough. I mean, I thought Texas versus OU back in the 2000s was a bitch. I thought that was like the worst thing that's ever happened to a team ever. But no, when I went and looked this up and realized that Florida has just absolutely dominated this thing for the better part of 2 decades. If Tennessee doesn't win this game, there's going to be lots of tears up on Rocky Top. There's going to be lots of moonshine consumed up on Rocky Top. There's going to be bad decisions made. There's going to be like a whole nother generation of volunteers that can't beat Florida. But I think Tennessee gets it done this year. I think they're going to win this game 31-27. So that's our trace. Other games for the week. Again, we got Tennessee over Florida. And we give a score prediction, but we're just looking at money line, right? We got Tennessee over Florida. We got Georgia over South Carolina. And then we got LSU to get it done over Mississippi State. Time for those Wyoming Cowboys. University of Texas comes back home after a big road win against Alabama. This game kicks at 7 p.m. Central Time on the Longhorn Network, which is a bitch. I mean, I think it's cool that Texas has its own network or had its own network. I'm kind of ready for... I mean, there's a lot of Texas fans that won't get to see this game or are going to have to like scramble and jump through hoops to try to see this game. Especially in the Austin area because these freaking cable companies and ESPN can't get along. It's ridiculous that people in Austin, Texas, a lot of people, like, I mean, I think that what I saw was like hundreds of thousands of people in Austin, Texas don't have any ESPN channels right now. But I'll digress. Texas is a 28.5-point favorite in this game. Texas is 5-0 in this series. The last time they met was back in 2012. And I don't remember the exact date, but when I was looking up the series just to see what it was like, I mean, they played like a long time ago was their first game. So this is a, I guess, long-running series from a time perspective, but just not a lot of games in that time. Both these teams looking to go 3-0. The last time Texas was 3-0 was 2012. 11 years ago. That doesn't even seem possible. Yet it is, folks. It is fact. The Texas Longhorns have not been 3-0 since 2012. I think this Wyoming team is interesting. Craig Bowl won 3 national titles in a row at North Dakota State. And I don't care what level you're playing at. You don't win like multiple championships in a row if you're not pretty good at what you do. So I think this Craig Bowl guy is like, he's a good coach. When you look at this team so far this year, they don't commit penalties. They've got the 3rd fewest penalty yards of anybody in college football. They're 7 of 7 in the red zone with 6 touchdowns. So once they get inside the 20, book them up for some points. They're going to score. Their quarterback, this Peasley kid, he's not by any means flashy, but he's got some moxie. If you watch the Texas Tech game, what was it, 4th and 7 with a chance to tie? Chance to tie in overtime. 4th and 7, Tech brings the house, like right up in his face. He just chills back there, finds a guy over the middle where all the blitz came from, dumps it off, touchdown. I mean, it's a ballsy play. He got thumped pretty hard on that play. This Wyoming team has 10 returning starters on defense. This Wyoming defense has held both of their opponents this season under 100 yards rushing. And I know it's just Tech. And Portland State, I believe, was their other opponent. Let me get a sip of this drink, y'all. Cheers. Me and my wife went and did a T-Man. That's Tex-Mex and margaritas. And usually when we do that, I come home and make myself a vodka drink. That's what that is. But this Wyoming team, I feel like they're going to be really, really tough. They're going to be disciplined. They're not going to do anything that kills themselves. And they're not afraid. Like, I don't think this Wyoming team is going to be intimidated to walk into Darrell K. Royal, strap it up against Texas, who's now the number 4 team in the country, in front of 100,000+ folks, in front of some new LED lights with who knows what music. We'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, this Punch was down 17-0 against Tech in like a blink of an eye. And they didn't blink. They just kept playing and kept playing and kept playing. And all of a sudden, they get it into overtime. And they make plays and win the damn game. Something I like to do once we get a little bit into the season is kind of look at the stats and kind of compare the two teams that we're talking about. And obviously, we're talking about Wyoming, Texas. Offensively, rushing yards per game, Wyoming has got the edge, 170 yards per game to Texas's 131 yards per game. But that's it for Wyoming in terms of leading in stats. Passing yards per game, 324 for Texas, 175 for Wyoming. Scoring offense, Texas is at 35 points per game. Wyoming is at 33 points per game. I think that sounds super close. But I think when you look at it and say one team's played Texas Tech and Portland State, the other team's played Rice and Alabama, maybe the gap's a little wider than that. In reality, defensively, Texas rushing-wise gives up 77 points per game. Wyoming's at 91 yards per game. Excuse me. I said points. I meant yards. Passing, Texas giving up 202 yards per game. Wyoming's giving up almost 300, 296 yards per game. Scoring defense is close, but again, I think you look at the teams that they've played. Texas is at 17 points per game. Wyoming is at 25 points per game. So 5 of those 6 categories, Texas leads in, is better in. Roster-wise, you look at both teams, and you got to say, Texas has just got a far superior roster. On paper, Texas should absolutely smash Wyoming. But we all know these football games, they're not played on paper. So I got some big questions. These are Sean's big questions of the game. I think the number one question, and this isn't like a secret, but can Texas avoid the letdown? You went on the road to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where nobody wins. Like, teams just don't go to Tuscaloosa. Even really good teams just don't go into Tuscaloosa and beat Nick Saban and beat Alabama. It's just not a thing that happens. Somehow Texas went on the road, made that happen, and made it happen, pretty convincingly. So you got to think they came back home and they feel pretty good about themselves, right? And who wouldn't? So the question for me is, does this Texas team, which we've seen this Texas team play up and down under Steve Sarkisian, depending on who they're playing, we've seen them play up and down. We've seen them play some really, really good games against really, really good opponents. Look back to the Alabama game last year. 21-point dogs in that game at home? 1 or 2 plays go the other direction, and Texas wins that game. And then we've seen them play, pretty lackluster football against sort of mediocre opponents. A lot. So, for me, it's, can Texas refocus, go back to work, despite the fact that, Wyoming's not a big name, and a lot of people feel like you should go out and win this game by a ton. One thing that is interesting to me along this front is Quinn Ewers text Steve Sarkisian on, I guess, Monday or Tuesday morning, early. I don't know. Texas typically practices in the morning, from what I understand. Text Steve Sarkisian and says, I need to have a players-only meeting. Monday's practice wasn't good. It wasn't our standard. Let me meet with the team. And that happened. Now, I try not to buy too much into this kind of crap either, because there were multiple player-only meetings during the Chuck Strong era and during the Tom Herman era that resulted in absolutely nothing on the football field. So it's yet to be seen whether this Quinn Ewers players-only meeting actually got this team back on the straight and narrow. But I like that Quinn Ewers did that. We talked on the show on Tuesday about how Quinn Ewers has really not been a vocal leader. He's not been an emotional guy. He's not been a guy that has talked a lot. And then you kind of saw after that last touchdown to A.D. Mitchell against Alabama Saturday night, you saw like it looked like just a lot of pressure, a lot of weight, like a year's worth of anxiety about being the number one quarterback at the University of Texas just all floated off, and it was gone. It was off his shoulders. And you saw some emotion out of Quinn Ewers. You saw like some vocalization out of Quinn Ewers, who, again, to this point has been very stoic, almost sociopathic, I've called him. Like, just, he's never up, he's never down. He's just there, right? We saw a different Quinn Ewers towards the end of that game against Alabama. So I wonder if we're going to start to see, like, the leadership of Quinn. I mean, he's always been talented. It hasn't always shown, but he's always been talented. So I wonder if we're starting to see Quinn Ewers grow up, mature, become that leader that really you got to have. Like, you look back to 2005, Texas Longhorns had Vince Young, probably one of the best leaders. One of the best, like, not only will I talk shit, but I will 100,000% back it up, and probably even more than you expected. And then you look at like 2009, 2008, Colt McCoy. Less vocal of a leader, but certainly a vocal leader on that team. The quarterback at a college football team has to be a leader. And part of being a leader is you speak up. So I think as Texas fans, we're all hoping this is the next sort of evolution for Quinn Ewers. I think another question, I don't think it's another question. It's my question, damn it. So can Texas get the running game going? The Rice game, a lot of people gave Texas a lot of shit. It wasn't flashy. But the guys that ran behind the number one offensive line against Rice averaged 5.7 yards per carry. That's pretty good. In total, I think they averaged 5.3 yards per carry against Rice. So, again, it wasn't flashy. We didn't see any big, huge, long runs. We didn't see anybody break any runs for touchdowns. And the offensive line struggled a little bit in the run game, struggled a little bit in the pass game. But the run game was pretty good against Rice. And then you go play Bama, and I think you got to expect when you're playing Bama that it's not going to be as good. And it wasn't. I mean, it was, again, nothing flashy, but situationally, it was very effective. Like, there were times in that game where Texas ran the ball, and Alabama knew they were going to run the ball, and all 100+ thousand people in the stadium knew they were going to run the ball, and Texas was able to get yards. I cannot tell you the last time. Well, I can tell you it was Baylor, but Baylor is not Alabama. I can't tell you the last time against a really good team, a really talented team like Alabama, that Texas was able to take the ball with 7 minutes left in the game and be kneeling on that damn thing as the clock went to 0. That's something that's something Texas fans have not seen in a long, long time. And we saw it Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. So again, can Texas get this running game going? Will this crowd be a factor Saturday night? One of the things that Steve Sarkisian, Chris Del Conte, they've been big about is how can we make Texas be a home field advantage? I was at some games back in the 2000s, like 2005 to 2010. There were some pretty big matchups at Darrell K. Royal. And for those big matchups, that place was rocking. But for a game like this, not so much. Lots of empty seats. Just sort of a, just apathetic crowd. Like, just kind of like, whatever. We're here. Show us something. And Chris Del Conte and Steve Sarkisian have really been working on that. And I think, this Texas fan base is starting to understand that a football game is more than just a social event, and the more you can make it hard on the other team, especially at home, the better it is. So I think there's some progress there, but historically it just hasn't been that way. I think one interesting thing about this game, it's a night game, 7 p.m. kick. Those LED lights that Texas just installed in the offseason are going to kick on Saturday night. There's going to be some songs that get played. I don't know which songs. If you've been watching Twitter, there's a huge debate amongst Texas fans which song should be the song. And I think the two most popular songs at this point, the two most popular choices at this point seem to be, in no particular order, if you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a Fiddle in the Band by Alabama, which, by the way, I like that song. That's a jam. Or Texas by X Da Plug, I think is how you say it, which I like that song too. I'm a 46-year-old white dude, man. I like that song. Takes me back to my Northeast Texas roots. I don't really care what it is. I just hope it's catchy. And I just hope that Texas fans can try to find a way to put a little of their own spin on it. Because let me tell you this. We were in Tuscaloosa Saturday night, having a damn good time up in the stands. And Dixieland Delight comes on, which is another Alabama song. And that fucking place went nuts. And I don't even know what Alabama fans are saying in the middle of that song, but they're all saying it, and it's all the same thing. And it was fun. And I'll tell you this too. I still can't get that damn song out of my head. I wake up in the middle of the night. What is it, Thursday? I woke up last night and freaking Dixieland Delight going through my daggum head. And I can see the pom-poms going, and I can see the Alabama fans, and I can hear the Alabama fans saying Roll Tide in between verses, and Texas too. And I don't even know what they're saying. But it was rocking, and those lights were going. The damn stadium literally shaking below our feet. I've been at a lot of cool games. I've been to some big games. I've been in stadiums where there's been a lot of people. And I don't think I've ever felt a stadium shake like I felt the stadium shake Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. So Texas fans, whatever the song is that accompanies these LED lights, we need to all get on the same page. And I won't be there, by the way. I really wish I could be there. I'm really disappointed I'm not going to be there for the inaugural LED light, whatever you call it. I want to be there. I'm not going to be there. So it's up to you, other Texas fans, to figure out how do we get this? How do we take this song and make it our own and turn it into a tradition and help these boys that are going to be out on the field stay hyped up the whole game, right? So I'm really interested to see that. You know, does the team show up? Of course, we want to know that. But do the fans show up? Or is it just another one of those kind of boring home games against a team that, you know, you should go beat the crap out of? I don't know. We'll see. Does Ewers play with a newfound freedom? So we talked about it a second ago. Like, Quinn Ewers has been a very stoic dude sort of his whole career here at Texas. You never see a lot of emotion either way. But we saw a lot of emotion out of him at the end of that Alabama game. I think the pressure for him was just so. I mean, you had NFL scouts saying this is a make or break game for Quinn Ewers. This game right here will decide whether Quinn Ewers is a first round draft pick or a guy that we tell, man, you got to go back for another year. You're just not ready for the NFL. So with all that pressure off of him, does Quinn Ewers just turn into a different guy? I think that I'm interested to see that. And I'm fixing to take another sip, y'all. Cheers one more time. I think, though, for Quinn, he's got a new kind of pressure on him. He's got the pressure of, I just went into Tuscaloosa, and I just threw the ball for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, and should have been more. That cat should have had 5 touchdowns in this game. Worthy dropped a touchdown. Brooks dropped a touchdown. Quinn Ewers was as on as Quinn Ewers has ever been on in that game against Alabama. But now he's got the pressure of, I got to do it again. I got to go prove that that wasn't a fluke. So does Quinn Ewers go out there with the same sort of I'm free, like finally I'm free type of attitude, or does he let that pressure, a different kind of pressure, sort of build up on him? Another question for me is, can this defense continue to force turnovers? This has been a huge emphasis for PK all offseason is, man, we got to create more turnovers. They just weren't good at turning the ball over last year. Even though situationally they did create some turnovers that helped them win some games, like on the whole, they just didn't turn teams over that much last year. Well, now they got 5 through 2 games, which is 14th in the country. 4 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery. And again, you talk about like some missed opportunities on offense. They've had some missed opportunities on D. Jalen Ford had his both hands on a ball against Alabama in the end zone. Ryan Watts had both hands on a ball in the end zone against Alabama. The fact that this team is 2-0 and has looked fairly good, and they've left so much on the table, it's pretty amazing. I mean, if you're a Texas fan, you got to be thinking they're just going to keep getting better and better and better. And a lot of those turnovers, a lot of those touchdowns are going to happen that hadn't happened. It's kind of like the deep ball thing. You look at Rice game. We weren't hitting a deep ball in that game. And then against Alabama, we just chose it was like very meticulously, strategically chosen shots down the field. And we hit on them. We either hit on them or got pass interference on them. So can this defense step up in maybe a game where the offense sort of sputters again like they did against Rice early on? Can this defense make some big plays? And then finally, I think the biggest question for me, and this is really the question like every single week, it should be the question every single week, do those big humans in the trenches simply just take over both sides of this line of scrimmage and just make it like a non-event? Now, I think you want to be a dominant football team. That's what you have to do. The bigs, those big humans that Steve Sarkisian loves and Kyle Flood loves, they have to just be able to just take the game over. And if those guys, if the big humans are playing at an elite level, you can have some misses and some off days other places. Like your running backs don't have to be perfect. Your quarterback doesn't have to be perfect. Your wide receivers don't have to be perfect if the offensive line is just dominating the line of scrimmage. Your linebackers don't have to be perfect. Your secondary doesn't have to be perfect if the defensive line is just dominating the line of scrimmage. Prediction time. I think Texas has a slow start. I think it's almost impossible for Texas to start fast in this game. Just, it's human nature, right? Like, you just did a lot of good stuff on the road. That takes a lot out of you emotionally. Wyoming's going to be jacked. They are not afraid of Texas, I promise you. They see this as an opportunity to go into a place that, they're not going to normally get to play in places like Darrell K. Royal. They're not going to normally get to play in front of 100,000 people. And they're not going to get a chance to do that against the number 4 team in the country. So Wyoming is going to be ready to play this game. And I think Texas won't be as prepared to take that on. I think this game is probably close through the first quarter, maybe midway through the second quarter. And then I think Texas comes out, just completely owns the rest of the game. I think Texas is going to have too many big plays on both sides of the ball. We're going to turn the ball over. We're going to turn Wyoming over. We'll hit some big shots down the field in the running game, probably the passing game for sure. I think Texas is going to win this game 45-13. Some random college football thoughts. We beat Bama, so you kind of look at the schedule and your thoughts start to turn to Red River Shootout. Red River Shootout has been played 118 times. Texas leads the series 63 wins, 50 losses, 5 ties. The first meeting of the Red River Shootout was back in 1900. And this game has been played, and back then this game bounced back and forth between Norman and Austin, and there were a few times they played in Dallas. It's been played exclusively in Dallas since 1929, and at the Cotton Bowl exclusively since 1932. So a whole long time ago was when this game went to Fair Park, and it's been at Fair Park since then. Interesting stat that a lot of you guys may not know, 75% of the games that Oklahoma and Texas have played against each other, they were not in the same conference. So when I see all this conference realignment happen, and I see all these teams start saying, oh, the rivalry's dead, bullshit. The rivalry does not have to be dead because you guys aren't in the same conference. The only thing that makes the rivalry die is the pettiness and bullshit that alumni bases have, athletic directors have. If you're an athletic director and you're going to let conference realignment ruin your long-standing rival then you suck. Period. State Fair is going on in Texas. Since 1932, the State Fair, synonymous with Texas OU, just a amazing atmosphere, right? You go into the State Fair on game day, half the people are wearing orange, half the people are wearing that disgusting maroon, crimson, whatever it's called. But you're all piled into this very small space. Hundreds and thousands, 100,000 people. And that's just the football fans, right? You're crammed into this really small fairground space. There's delicious food everywhere. There's fried everything you could think of. Beer stands every 2 feet. Stadium split right down the middle on the 50-yard line. Super unique. Like, that doesn't happen anywhere else that I'm aware of. But I keep hearing all these conversation about, this game might move. And we've been hearing that for, it's been a decade now at least. Probably before that. There's people that, the Cotton Bowl's a dump. It doesn't have good amenities. There's no air conditioning anywhere. I gotta walk outside the stadium to go to get in a porta potty to go to the bathroom. And folks, the Cotton Bowl is a dump. I mean, the Cotton Bowl was built in 1929, I think. It's a shithole. It's a shithole just like Wrigley Field is a shithole. Just like Fenway Park is a shithole. I've been to a lot of baseball stadiums. Wrigley Field and Fenway Park are the coolest places I've ever been to watch a baseball game. Love both of those stadiums. And they're dumps. There's nothing to them. Keep hearing the Fair Park area is dangerous. I don't know. It may be. I've been to Baghdad a bunch of times. I've never felt unsafe around Fair Park. Folks say we should just go ahead and move this game to Jerry World. Just move it out to Jerry World. It's a nicer stadium. They got air conditioning. They got suites. Man, it'll make more money. You got folks that say, man, just make it a home and home. We don't want to go to Jerry World. Just make it a home and home. I mean, no, don't do that. Don't do either one of those things. I did a Twitter poll today, and it said the Red River Shootout has to move. Where's it moving to? And the choices I gave were Jerry World, home and home, and then or rebuild the Cotton Bowl. 20% said move it to Jerry World. Y'all are all idiots. Like, don't talk ever again. 26% say home and home. I don't like that either. And then 54% say rebuild the Cotton Bowl. And honestly, so here's how I would rate these from good idea to bad idea. Rebuild the Cotton Bowl is at the top of my list. Just tear down that old dilapidated piece of shit, build a new stadium, call it the Cotton Bowl, keep it at the fairgrounds, continue to play the game during the State Fair of Texas. That's the number one choice. If it's got to move. I say leave it in the Cotton Bowl. I think if you need air conditioning in October and you can't watch a game for 3 hours and you need luxury amenities to go watch a football game, then the Red River Shootout's just not a game for you. For me, the second option would be make it a home and home, which I hate. I absolutely hate. And then the absolute worst idea out of any of the ideas that ever get thrown out is move this thing to Jerry World. You move this thing to Jerry World, yeah, you'll make more money. Yeah, there's more seats to sell. Yeah, the people that, complain about everything will be happier. But you kill everything about this game if you move this game away from Fair Park. You take it out of the State Fair. To me, there's really only two options. You either just keep playing it there until the stadium just absolutely falls down on its own, and then you rebuild it, or you decide to just level that piece of shit, build a new stadium, call it the Cotton Bowl right there in the fairgrounds. Those are the only two choices, in my opinion. You guys let me know what you think. horntakespodcast@gmail.com. Some crazy crap coming out of, I don't know where it's coming from. It's like it's people talking shit on Twitter and the interwebs and all that. Texas A&M, Bama, and Coach Prime. There's all kinds of rumors out there right now about, and again, these are totally just rumors, probably 100% bullshit, but they're kind of fun to talk about. There's all these rumors about Texas A&M buying out Jimbo and trying to target, and I've heard, I've seen, this is big time A&M boosters. This is comments coming from ex-players that are tied into the program. They want Jimbo out, and they want to target Deion Sanders. And I think that's just fascinating on so many levels. Forget the fact that, forget the validity of the rumor. That's not even important. Let's just think about, the rumor itself and what that would mean. It's freaking hilarious that A&M wants to buy out their coach to the tune of $70 million at this point, after they just got done saying that they got him for 10 because they couldn't get him for 15. It's the most Aggie thing ever. We want to pay $70 million to get rid of our coach today, to go pay who knows how much for Coach Prime. Because at this point, if someone's desperate enough to go after Coach Prime, it's not going to happen cheaply. The most hilarious thing about it is, Coach Prime has had some good success so far at Colorado. He's done better than I thought he would do. He's done better than probably, I don't know, 80% of college football fans thought he would. I mean, I hate to throw a number or a percentage on it, but I think most people didn't think that Coach Prime would be 2-0 right now. And it's a long season, folks. We don't know what's going to happen. They may lose every single game the rest of the season. They could very well lose, or they could very well win several more games this season. We just don't know. But I think it's funny, even if it's just a rumor, that means someone's talking about it. That A&M is someone that's associated with A&M, whether it's a fan or whatever, thinks it would be a good idea to buy out Jimbo Fisher for $70 million, which I think that's what his buyout is at this point. 10-year contract. It's out to 2030. And the buyout goes down a certain amount every single year. And so I think we're sitting at the 70 million point. And then go throw a bunch of money at, Deion's kind of unproven still, right? He hasn't even made it through a full season of major Division I football. And then I've even seen like, and again, it's all rumors. It's all bullshit, but it means people are talking about it. Bama, Nick Saban's supposedly retiring, right? There's rumors out there that Nick Saban's retiring after this season. He did buy a beach house. Kind of makes sense. He bought a place, he's at least thinking about it because he bought a place to settle down when he's done. But there's Bama people talking about, like, we need to get rid of Nick Saban and let's go get Coach Prime. There's Bama fans out there that are saying the dynasty's over. And Milroe ain't it. Bama had 10 players drafted in the NFL draft last year, and 8 of them in the first 3 rounds. Milroe is a redshirt freshman. And honestly, I think if Alabama put more emphasis on letting him run the ball, like designed runs, kind of the way Texas did with Vince Young back in the day, they may have beat Texas Saturday night. I think the decision for Nick Saban and Alabama coaching staff is like, what do we do with Milroe? Do we continue to try to take a square peg and jam it in a round hole? Or do we just start playing to this kid's strength? He's a hell of a runner. He is a great, I wouldn't say he's a great thrower. He's a really good thrower. He's efficient. The kid can get the ball down the field. He's well ahead of Vince Young at this point in their careers. Let's just say that. But you got these Alabama fans hollering and screaming that Nick Saban's done, the dynasty's over. I can't lie and tell you I haven't asked the question. Are we starting to see maybe the end of Nick Saban? You can go back and look at my TikTok videos. There's videos at the end of last season where I kind of asked that. This isn't the same Nick Saban. This isn't the same Alabama team. But I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it's the truth and you can't, just turn on Paul Feinbaum's show, man. It's hilarious. But back to this Prime shit, what if he did end up at either one of those places? Could you imagine Coach Prime at Alabama? I think I could imagine Coach Prime at Texas A&M. I could see that totally. I don't know if I see Coach Prime at Alabama. That one's hard for me to see. But let's say it happened. Man, I think that might be a problem for college football. He's already known as a really good recruiter. I think his momentum in recruiting is really hot right now. Obviously we're not around any signing periods or anything like that. What he's doing this second and what he's done to this point in the season is nothing but at this point, it's just this is what I can do. We don't know what the team is going to end up doing ultimately through the rest of the season. But if they keep up this, if they keep playing like they're playing today, they're gonna have a decent record. What kind of monster from a recruiting perspective could Coach Prime build with the resources and the tradition and the money behind him that you get at a place like Alabama or a place you get like Texas A&M? The only kind of real negative thing you can recruit against Prime about at this point, the only skins he doesn't have on the wall at this point are putting players in the NFL and winning championships. And the former, he hasn't done because he hasn't been in college football that long. He's going to put some dudes in the NFL. It's kind of yet to be seen whether he'll win some championships at Colorado. I know he won, I think the SWAC, or I think he was in the SWAC, whatever it was, there at Jackson State. But I mean, I don't think, like, if you look at like national recruiting, that moves the needle that much. But I think winning the Pac-12 moves the needle. Going into the Big 12 and winning that conference moves the needle. I'm still skeptical that that's going to happen for him, but he's definitely going to put some guys in the NFL. Travis Hunter's going to the NFL. That Horn kid at wide receiver on the other side, he's going to the NFL. I think Shadur Sanders has a good shot at going to the NFL. Getting a look. I mean, those guys will get looks, right? Check us out tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, I haven't decided yet, but I think we're going to do a TikTok live. We did one Wednesday night. We've done a couple over the last couple weeks. They've been fun. Question and answer sessions, whatever. Try to do that maybe tomorrow night. Tuesday for sure. We'll do our Trace Other Games recap. We'll see how we did this week. We haven't been good the last couple weeks. We'll recap Wyoming game. Can those Texas Longhorns come out? Can they be ready to play and get it done? Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's at Horn Takes. Twitter, TikTok, at Horn Takes. Email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good one. Get hooked.